Hello, Tal.
Hi,
I'm
Grace.
so glad you joined us, and everybody needs to notice that you have on your UK mask. She is a woman, ladies and gentlemen, and when you need your stress fix, you need to go to Crank and Boom. That is the
Yes,
place you need to go. Best ice cream in Lexington, and you're supporting local, right?
that's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. But Tal has done this with me several times, and I wish you were in person with us. But I'm glad you can do it this way because I know how busy you are. So I love starting out with you telling them your grand adventure because I think when you're 21 years old, you think, boom, it just happened.
Right.
But you are a great story of telling that it doesn't, even though it is crank and boom. So if you'll tell us your story, please.
Sure. Thanks for having me. And I do wish that we could have done this in person because then I could actually bring your class ice cream like I usually do. But at some point we'll be able to do that again. But appreciate you having me on and taking the time to chat because I always love just chatting about leadership and community and all the great things that you do for your students and UK and everything else. But so my story actually starts in Frankfurt. So I was born in Lexington, but I grew up in Frankfurt. And my parents are from Thailand. So they are immigrants from Thailand. They came over to the US in the 70s and started their first business in 1990. So they had been in this country for 20 some years before they were felt brave enough to start their own business, along with being brave to leave their own country and leave everything they know. They had my mom had her sister over here. So they had one person that they knew over here. And so their story is interesting as well. So coming over, not knowing English very well, and both of
Wow.
them have master's degrees. They came over to go to school, so they both have master's degrees, and ended up, and at the same time as getting their master's degrees, they were working fast food jobs because that's what they could get. So they would trade off working 2 3 jobs at a time and raising kids at the same time. And so anytime I feel like I'm a little tired, I think about their story, and it really puts things into perspective.
Where
But
did
I
they
grew up in, yes,
where did
I grew, say that again, Grace.
they get their masters?
My mom went to EKU. She got a master's in biology. And then my dad went to KSU in Frankfurt
Okay.
and got his master's in public affairs.
Wow.
So yeah, so they
Okay. So
education is very important
oh yeah.
in our family, of course. But I grew up in Frankfurt, and they started their restaurant when I was 7 years old. So from the time I was 7 to 18, I worked in that restaurant, and I didn't have a normal childhood from that point. Once we had that restaurant, that was basically where I lived. So after school, I would go to the restaurant. If I did any activities, I was in charge of finding my own way. So I would get dropped off at swim practice, and my mom would say, "You can swim, but you got to find your own way home." So, because we're working. So every day I would go and hunt somebody down and see if I could get a ride. And so that taught me independence, because otherwise I would just be left at the pool. And
And do let them know you play tuba in the band. And
I did.
how tall are you?
I am 5'0", generously, with
So
shoes.
tuba was about the same height as you.
It was a little taller than me, actually. So it's a little taller than me. So I was in the band. So I did a lot of activities, even though my parents were not able to really support me and giving me rides and stuff. But I figured out a way because I liked learning and I liked doing stuff, and I love the band. And I know your husband was my sister's band director
Oh, I've
in
forgotten.
middle school.
I had forgotten that.
Yeah, so there's that connection as well. But yeah, I was in the band in middle school and high school, and played 4 different sports, and was
Wow. Caught
different.
lots of pride.
And so I like being busy. So I did a lot of different clubs, and then at the same time also worked in our restaurant. So I didn't go to summer camp. I worked, and it was like kind of like a normal job. After school, I would go work. We would work till 10, 11, midnight o'clock in the morning. And it taught me hard work, what hard work looked like.
Yeah.
It taught me a lot about sacrifice. So I didn't even know what it meant to go out on a Friday night, because Friday was our busiest night. So I worked in the restaurant. So my first job was pouring water, and then my second job was working the cash register. So I kept pushing the buttons on the cash register. So my dad told me that if I was going to mess around, that he was going to teach me how to actually work the cash register. So people would come and give me their credit card. And at the time we didn't have the electronic swiper. We had the mechanical swiper. And people would, and this, you know, I was 9 years old, and they would look at me like, "Are you sure you don't want to get your daddy to run that credit card for you?" And I would look at them with it's not that hard. I can do this. But, you know, I'm a small person, so they didn't have a lot of faith in this small person to run their credit card for them. So I was in the business learning those jobs. I learned to cook in the restaurant probably when I was 10 years old. So I was helping in the back as well. So the restaurant world is ingrained in me. And because that was basically my childhood. When I was 18 and ready to go to college, I was ready to leave Kentucky. I slammed the door and said, "I'm never coming back," and said, "I swear that I'm never going to be in the food industry ever again. Like, I'm never going to work in food. I hate it. I'm tired of it." And then sure enough, I went to school at UNC and swore, and I didn't actually have any server jobs. I didn't work in the restaurant industry because I just had sworn it off. But then I started cooking for my friends and found that was a really fun way to make friends. I didn't know anybody at school, so I went and had to make friends. And the cooking was a great way to bring people together and make friends, and people wanted to hang out with you when you always had food, and it was good food. So that's how I started to get the itch to work back in the food industry again. And at some point during those 4 years, decided that, like, maybe I could do food again. Maybe I want to open a restaurant again someday. And that was sort of my dream that had got plugged in at that point.
Yeah, but tell them about how you did academically at UNC. Sure. Sounds like you might have done too much cooking and not enough of the other stuff.
Yeah, well, I grew up in an environment where education was very important. Getting A's was not enough. You had to get hundreds. And so a 98 was not acceptable in our household. And so I grew up through all my schooling and education getting straight A's. Pretty much in high school, I got straight A's. I was salutatorian of our class. I didn't really know what it meant to fail academically. But then as I was pursuing pre-med. That was my sister's a doctor, and it was kind of in my cards. And my aunt is a doctor. So we thought, to be successful, you have to be a doctor. So I went pre-med, started going to science classes, realized it's a lot harder at UNC than it is at Franklin County High School. And I started to really struggle academically. Things were not as easy. And when you had to really do a lot of work to get the grades and to keep up, I didn't have that in me. And I didn't really know how to study either, because I hadn't really had to study that hard to do well. So that was a big eye opener once I got to college. And suddenly I'm at a very, rigorous university with a whole bunch of other people, 30 some thousand other people that are all competing to do well. And I started to shut down in that environment because I wasn't passionate about science when it got hard. And I didn't really know what else I was supposed to do, because I was supposed to be a doctor. And now I'm failing these classes because I didn't know how to be successful, and I didn't know how to ask for help. And then 9/11 happened at the same time while I was in school. So the whole world felt like it was falling apart, in a global sense, and then also in my own little tiny world that I was there without a lot of support. And so I started getting B's, I started getting C's, and I got one F. And my mom cried for days because she thought my life was over.
Did you get real depressed too? Didn't you?
I did. I was extremely depressed. I didn't have a support system. I just didn't know what I was my whole path through my whole life was to be a doctor. And then when it looked like it was just not going to happen because I wasn't going to make the grades to get there, and I found out I wasn't really passionate about it, I was lost, and I didn't really know what to do at that point. And so at some point, I remember I was sitting in my room and just feeling sad and sorry for myself, and didn't really know what to do because I was failing these classes. And I didn't want to not go to school, but I didn't really know what to do. And then something just, I don't know, I don't think it was anything particular, but I had a thought that would just said, well, me being here, being sad in my room and getting bad grades is not going to do anything for anybody, especially me. It's not going to do anything for me. And it's certainly not going to do anything for my family or anyone around me.
Right.
And so I was already involved in Habitat for Humanity when I got to school, and started to really dive into the work with Habitat, working in different projects. We had a spring break trip we were trying to raise money for, so I kind of lost myself in doing that service work. Service work is what really pulled me out of it, and finding my community there. And then I had a point where I was like, well, I need to graduate in 4 years.
And you were starting to think outwardly of others rather than inwardly of yourself, which I think
it seemed, in a selfish way, it seemed like, well, the only way I can feel good about myself right now is if I do something for someone else. And that was the first step. I was like, I'm going to raise money, or I'm going to go rake leaves, and we'll maybe make $50 for Habitat, but I'll feel good about myself for doing that. So that was my way of how I dug out of that. And then academically, I wanted to graduate in 4 years. And so I basically went through the catalog of majors and had a list and said, what is left that will actually let me graduate? Because I couldn't get into business school at the time because I didn't have I had failed accounting. And I think I had a D in statistics. So that's the other irony, is I failed out of going to business school. So I had no chance to get into business school. So I looked at the catalog of majors and thought, okay, what's tolerable? I was like, I could be an art major. I don't really want to be an art major. I went back and forth and landed on journalism, which, I've always enjoyed writing and thought that was good enough that I could kind of scrape by into journalism. But at the time, the journalism school there is also a mass communications school. And so they were pretty forward thinking in that they had everybody learn how to build a website. They had everybody learn how to do basic graphic design. They had everybody learn how to do basic Photoshop skills. And so in doing journalism, I also ended up doing a concentration in public relations, which I didn't realize that I had already done that as I worked in my parents' restaurant. I would write letters before we had emails. I would write letters to the food writer at the Herald Leader and say, we're going to have a special event next week. Can you please include it in the paper? So at 10 years old, because I was writing, because my parents they felt like my writing skills were better than theirs as English as a second language. They had me doing this work. They said, be sure to write Sharon a letter. And so I was like, that was my first job in PR, was doing mass communications and doing that as a 10-year-old, and I didn't even know it. And I would make the signs at the restaurant that said, we're having a special event. And so all these things that I didn't know they were connected, that this major was connected with this job. But I've been doing that job since I was 8-10 years old. And so I started to fall in love with graphic design and marketing, and falling in love with web design. I really latched onto it. I'd spend hours and hours in the lab working on my website, even though I didn't have to, and really appreciated that was even an option.
Yeah, you started really going into what you finally realized was your strength.
Right. And it just
by when you're doing that.
Right. I thought I was just going to scrape by and, graduate, but I ended up getting on the dean's list because I loved it and I did really well. I ended up getting close to a 4.0 my last 2 years of school. And so I think that's really important, knowing that if you can find what you're passionate about, if you're willing to sit in the lab when you don't have to, or you're willing to do something for hours and hours on end when you don't have to, that was a clear sign that there was something that
it's really okay to change majors. It's okay to change majors.
That's right. Yeah.
My
advisor, I think her file for mine was like this big because I kept changing. I literally officially probably changed majors about 4 or 5 times until I could find something that I felt like I could tolerate. And it ended up being something that I really love. So
your first job was with Habitat, wasn't it, when you got out of school?
It was, yeah. So I did graduate, and decided to come back to Kentucky like a good old Kentucky girl. And I will point out that I've never cheered for UNC basketball, even when I was there.
Thank you.
So there's some controversy that people think that I cheered for the other team. And people ask my friends from UNC, did she actually cheer for you? They're like, no, she's always cheered for Kentucky. So I
Well,
just
we
think
like you a
that's
lot
cute.
better now.
That's
We like
right.
you a lot better now.
That's good.
So then you started with Habitat.
So I started my first job with Habitat,
Mhm.
and I was in marketing, so I really enjoyed it. But I was there for about a year and a half, and had the opportunity to go to India on a project. This was after the big South Asian tsunami in 2004 had happened, and my mentor, he was putting together a trip to take 60 Kentuckians over to India to rebuild this village that had been completely wiped out by the tsunami. And I thought, I've always loved traveling, and I knew I wasn't quite sure where my life was going. And so again, I was at a place where I'm just going to throw myself into service, and then I'll find my way. I always figured I would find my way.
Yeah.
So ended up in India for 4 weeks, and worked and lived and in this very rural place in India. They had never seen white people before, or non-Indian foreigners before. And so it was a really interesting experience, really humbling. When you're there seeing people that don't have shoes, who are reusing your bottled water as toys.
Wow.
It's a whole different world. And it is a place that is very humbling in understanding your own privilege and your own what you have. And the fact that we live here in America, no matter what status you're in, is a lottery ticket already. And I already knew that because my parents are immigrants. But I always felt like just being in America at all, the fact that you can live here no matter where you are, whatever station, is already a lottery ticket.
Yeah. Which we all take for granted when we've been here all of our lives.
I think so. I think a lot of people, and that's why I love telling people to travel as much as they can, see how other people live, just different cultures.
There's a lot of great opportunities when they're undergrads to do that too. So
Absolutely.
You're right. So then when did you get back in the restaurant business?
So once I got back from India, I needed a job. I didn't have a place to live. I didn't have a job, and I think I had about $30 to my name. So I got a job with a catering company, Seasons Catering, who I love and still adore. And Kelly, who's the owner, is still a mentor of mine, and I always ask her for advice. But got a catering job, and then I drug my parents out of early retirement and said, can we open a restaurant in Lexington, since this is where I live now, and I feel like Lexington would love to have our food that we had in Frankfurt.
Yeah.
So the old restaurant, they sold to the family that owns it now. So they had been out of the business. And so we opened Thai Orchid Cafe in 2006. And and so we ran that restaurant. We, did it for, I guess, 5 solid years, and it was 18-hour days, 20-hour days sometimes. I mean, that's all we did. And I think it's funny that I hated that life so much as a child, but then I went back to it because that's all I knew, is to work that hard, to sacrifice. Yeah. And that's what it takes to build a business from the ground up. And that's what my parents had taught me.
Yeah. And then you started whipping together some ice cream, right?
We did. And so my husband and I, something else that happened in India was I found a husband who was on the trip. He's from Lexington. We ended up getting together and getting to know each other better in India, came back here, got married a few years later. And after 5 years, we were married at the time. And then we bought the restaurant from my parents. I decided to make some changes to what was going on, and decided to make ice cream as a dessert option. And so that's how Crank and Boom started, was just me making some coconut ice cream. And I was using a 2-quart Cuisinart. So if you think 2 quarts is half of a gallon of milk, that's how much we were making a day. And I would be real excited when we'd sell out. So we'd sell out after, 4 or 5 servings. Yeah. And people love the ice cream. And so I thought, well, why don't I make other flavors out of stuff? We're already going to the farmer's market for the restaurant. Then why don't I pick up, say, some strawberries or some blackberries
Right.
or sweet potatoes? Our second flavor after coconut was sweet potato pie.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I thought, this was right when the craft beer was starting, craft ice cream, craft food. And I thought at the time that was kind of a funky, weird thing to put together and that people might think it was interesting.
Right.
So we made sweet potato pie ice cream, made coffee stout ice cream, strawberry ice cream. And we noticed maybe after 6 months of doing this ice cream thing, and we were still making 2 quarts at a time during the day, people started coming in. It was blizzarding outside. This was a real poignant moment. It was blizzarding outside. There was nobody coming into the restaurant because everyone's hunkered down at their house. We see a lady coming to the restaurant. You can see it out the window. She's in a giant parka, and she comes in and she says, "I want to buy some ice cream." And this is like minus 100 degrees outside. And she said, "I really want to buy some ice cream." And he said, "Is that all you want?" And she said, "Yep." So she didn't want to buy any Thai food. She just wanted ice cream. And it was crazy blizzarding outside. And we thought, well, that's interesting. And moments like that kept happening over and over.
Yeah.
People would come in and they would just want ice cream to take home. And that was it. They didn't order any Thai food.
Yeah.
So we thought, well, wouldn't it be kind of a fun summer thing? Because we're not that busy in the summer. That we can just take a little ice cream cart out to the farmer's market and sell ice cream as like a little fun side thing.
Right.
And then the, fun side thing turned into doing 100, 200 events, going to farmer's market, festivals. We started selling to local restaurants, to the local co-op. And it was just one little baby step at a time.
Right. You didn't say, oh, now we're going to open a storefronts and all that. Like you said, took what Chris and did the baby steps.
Right. Lots of little baby steps. And a lot of our big steps were basically from customer demand. And so when we were going out, they're like, well, where's your shop? And it's like, well, we don't really have a shop, but we have a Thai restaurant that you can go and get ice cream, or you can go to the co-op and get ice cream. And that really confused people, and people seemed very unsatisfied with that answer. And so eventually we had enough people saying, we really need you to just open a shop for Crank and Boom. And that was, probably 2-3 years in the process of us going out and doing all these events. And so we were running this restaurant full time, and then we're running this ice cream business. The little side business ended up being a full blown business, just baby steps. Yeah. And so
now
that's how it kept growing.
Yeah. And you have 2 stores now.
And we have 2 stores now, and
tell them where they are so they can run out there and
there's one in the Distillery District, and then there's one at Clays Mill Road, right around the corner from North Lime Donuts.
And you kind of helped get that Distillery District going too, haven't you? Because I'm sure a lot of these guys know about the Distillery District.
Right. The Distillery District, when we got there, was nothing like it is now. So there was no parking lot. It was just gravel. There were no lights. I think there's still not really any lights. There were no parking spots. I mean, it was just a crazy mess. So it was us and a few other businesses that were there. Our neighbor had a pistol in his back pocket when we got there. So he just carried it around. I think he was an ex-Marine. He actually just passed away like a week or so ago, but he was a really sweet guy. But we thought, like, man, if this guy's armed, maybe this is not a good idea. But it ended up being fantastic, and people loved how organic and authentic it was, and this growth in this really cool area in the city was coming up. And now we're a hot tourist destination down there, so lots of visitors. And
I volunteer at the visitor center, and we send them your way a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, so you just never know, and being an entrepreneur is all about risk. So it could have, I said, I don't know if anybody's going to show up, but we're going to build the store and just open the door and see what happens and hope for the best.
And now in the midst of all this, you do tons for the community, because I try to really emphasize to students about servant leadership. And to me, you're one of the queens of that.
Thank you.
And so I want you to tell me why you think that's important and what things you are doing.
Sure.
And
Yeah, so even when we were, just a little Thai restaurant, we certainly didn't have any money to give to the community, but we had food and we had our time. And for me, having a business was really just a vehicle. My real dream is to, be like Bill Gates and kind of retire the business side and just be a philanthropist full time. But for now, I still have to earn a living for for my life. But someday, I would just love to be a full-time philanthropist. But I knew that to get there, I would have to I just wanted to incorporate service into what we did. It's just who I am inside. And that's where, I talk to people who want to do what we do. And I tell them, I was like, if it's not in your heart, you shouldn't pretend to do it, because people are smart and people know when it's not authentic. And if you try to do something just because, I tell people to the local food trend, if you don't believe in local food and the economy and the things behind it truly and deeply, you just shouldn't do it. Like, don't try to be someone that you're not. So you just have to be who you are. And so really the community service piece was just an expression of who my husband and I are in our core. And so we find joy in giving back to others. We love building bridges. We love being a communicator to let other community members know what different causes are going on and how we can highlight that and how we can, and now that we're bigger, we can support people financially, which is really important.
Well, you get your team involved with it, because I know you pack food. Are you still doing that during the coronavirus?
We are. So we take a break during the summer, but we have a partnership with Feed Backpack Program, and we sponsor and support 3 main schools. We end up going up to 6 or 7 schools during COVID, but for the fall, we're going to go back to our 3 main schools that we support. But the backpack program is we pack bags of non-perishable food for resource folks at schools to put in kids' backpacks for the weekend. So a lot of kids get their food, all their food resources at school. And so over the weekend, a lot of kids don't eat. So we pack them things like ready to microwave mac and cheese, canned veggies, milk, and some other things that seem pretty basic to a lot of people, but for a lot of kids, it's hope. It's something to look forward to. And so our team packs, we support them logistically. We have like a little mini food pantry in our warehouse.
I've seen it on video. Everybody needs to follow Tal's group on Instagram. It's very entertaining, and they show that.
We try to keep it fun, but we pack food, and we've supported a lot of different causes over the years, and we've been focusing on supporting Black Lives Matter during the racial unrest that we've had, and then also supporting just other organizations in the community.
And do you think this has benefited your company too? I mean, I know that's not your objective, but that's what people find when you give. Then positives happen with with you and your organization too. Have you seen that?
Oh, absolutely. I think, it's been our mission since day one. It's just a part of who we are. So I think people know that, but we try to really use it as a tool to inspire other companies to say, hey, we are, quote unquote, successful. I don't know how you measure that necessarily, but we're still here, but we also are still able to give back. We ended up, when COVID first hit and we were shut down, for in-person service.
About how COVID affected you.
Yeah, we decided after a while, I was like, well, why don't we do a fun, people need some light in their life because there's a lot of heavy things happening right now. So we thought, why don't we do a flavor called Candy Bashir after the governor, and we'll do it for we'll give a portion to charity. And just, I don't know, it'll be just a fun thing that will be a way we can give back. And at the time when we're shut down and potentially losing, we just lost massive amounts of income because we couldn't do events. We had a whole division that's just completely disappeared.
Yeah.
And so then what do? We have a whole team that relies on that income. Are we going to have to do a mass layoff? We ended up only
Yeah. Did you have to lay off many people?
We actually were lucky in that when this started, we still had our winter staff, which is our main core staff. And I think we furloughed someone for a couple weeks, and that was it.
That's awesome.
And so we've kept it really tight with our team. We usually do a mass hiring for the summer, but we just did a little bit of hiring. So we were lucky in that sense. And because we were able to come up with these creative flavors that also gave back to the community, we're still giving, and we've given probably close to $25,000 back to the community during
You
COVID.
are kidding me.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
We're still
Wow.
going. So as a tiny small business,
Oh gosh.
and the percentage of what that is, but really what we're doing is some of that is us giving, but it's also us really just raising money from the community. Right. So, we make our
them an avenue to do that, and
right.
really a fun avenue to do it, because you did one for Virginia that does the sign.
Yeah. The Virginia. So we end up doing 8 different flavors. We called them Team Kentucky flavors. And all of them went to charity. And now all of our small batches go to a charity. So they're $10 each. And so $2 of each pint will go to an organization. So right now we're supporting the Nest, which is a group that supports family, women, and children. Mm-hmm. But yeah, nonprofits are struggling too. And so if we can bring a little bit of light to what they're doing, as well as, bringing fun flavors for people, and then also helping them financially, then
and you proved that you have to think out of the box. We all have a tendency to stay in the box, but all of a sudden it's like we could order in advance and drive up, and you brought it out to us, and then we had it delivered, because you normally didn't deliver, did you?
We did not deliver ourselves. We do local delivery through Amazon, so you can actually order pints through Amazon Prime. But
during the COVID,
we decided to do our own. It took us about 20 hours to set up curbside. So we got shut down. By the next day, we were doing curbside. And I always tell our team, I was like, it might not be pretty, and it's not going to be perfect, but we just got to do it. And you just got to dive in. And I think a lot of folks, no matter what age, get caught up in perfection. And I always say, and I steal this from Rob Perez, perfection is the opposite of profits.
Yeah.
So if you worry so much about being perfect, you'll never be profitable, because you'll never change, or you'll be scared, or any of those.
And when we got a bag of ours one time, I mean, there was artwork on the outside too.
Yeah,
like, did that. Those little things that you all do that I feel like, creates people more to buy in with you now too. Right. It's because the ice cream's great, but it's the whole experience of the ice cream.
Right.
And when it has a purpose behind it too.
Right.
I mean,
and there's, and we always put the customers first. We want to be, not just service to the community, but people who are there supporting us, they are the ones that are keeping us going. And so when, I answer most of our DMs on social media directly, and I tell them that it's me. And if they have an issue, I try to fix it directly. And every single person and every single comment is important. And I think when you take the time to do that for people, that's how you build a community, and that's how you build a fan base, people who are really devoted. One example is, we have 2 systems on our online system that don't talk to each other. So people who get certain coupons, it doesn't work on our online system. And so somebody said, do you know if you'll ever be able to get that to work? And I knew that the 2 systems just don't talk to each other. So it's never going to work. So I told her, I said, I'm going to create you a new coupon for the online, and then you keep your old coupon, and then you just come visit us when it's convenient for you. And it's so simple. And it's just about caring about
ice cream, and she'll tell 5 people about what you did too.
Right.
It's positive. So if you were going to share 2 big leadership lessons that you've learned through your experience, or things that you think they ought to take away about being a good leader, and as you and I've talked about, leadership's influence. Again, you started as a little tuba player at Franklin County, and to me, you're a big influencer in Lexington, Kentucky, and really further than that. What would those 2 leadership lessons be?
I would say probably number one is be who you are. I think when I first started my journey as a boss or as somebody who was in charge of leading others, I thought I had to be, big and brash and yell at people. And I had such a hard time with that. And I found that once I let that go and stopped yelling at people, because it wasn't who I was, but I thought to lead, that's what I had to do. When I started to shift and be who I was and be a more compassionate leader, when I started to just be more human and crack my heart open a little more, I found that those connections that I made with our team and, just, and not living by the rules. I think there's so many quote unquote corporate rules that say, oh, okay, well, you get 2 weeks vacation. So anyone who's salaried with us, we don't have set vacation time. Just say you get your job done. If you want to take some time, I don't need to know if you need to go to a doctor's appointment. Just, I don't know what our team schedule is. I have to ask them sometimes and they have to tell me, well, I'm taking today off. Like, okay, that's fine. And having that trust in people.
Yeah.
And then finding great people. And we have certainly circulated through enough not great people that it's taken us, 15 years to build the team that we have now. So nothing happens overnight.
People, they pull in great people, which is,
absolutely. And just, working with people that you love and care.
What would be your second?
So second, I would probably say, probably what I mentioned before is not trying to be a perfect person. And
doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. And then a lot of times the perfection will equal to fear, and then fear equals inaction, or trying to be a certain way is just not productive. And so I always tell our crew is like 80% is going to still be better than if we just do nothing.
Yeah.
So we just got to kind of roll with it and massage it and know that there will be a lot of mistakes and that we'll just deal with it as they come.
Boy, and you made my life better the first time I went to do the carry out and pick it up. You all gave me some combs too.
Oh, good.
Special treat on top, which was
good.
Again, you remember those things.
Yeah.
But again, I think your name is Tao because it rhymes with wow.
Yeah,
and,
thank you.
That's what I think when I think of you. So thank you for doing this. And I want to remind students too, when coronavirus ends, you'll start hiring more people. And they need to watch for that because you take good care of your people, plus you'll learn how to really lead. So thank you, Tao. I appreciate it. And take care of those Take care of those cute kids.
I will do.
We'll talk later. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.